I stood at the front door of the house I bought with 30 years of hard work, and my own daughter told me to leave. Then she changed the locks. My name is Gerald. I'm 67 years old, and I need you to understand something before this story goes any further. I was not a bad father. I was not a neglectful husband. I was not a man who deserved what happened to him. I spent 31 years working double shifts at a paper mill in central Ohio. My wife Sandra and I, we weren't rich, but we were careful. We saved, we sacrificed, and in 1998, we bought a house, a real house, 3 bedrooms, a yard, the kind of place we'd dreamed about since we were newlyweds in a rented apartment with a leaking ceiling and one electric burner that only worked sideways. Sandra passed 8 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. Fast. It took her in 4 months. And when she left me alone in that house, with all the silence that fills a home when its heart is gone. Can you imagine that? 30 years of a life built together, and then one morning it's just you and the echo of someone else's footsteps? My daughter, Renee, she's 41, moved in about 2 years after Sandra passed. She said she was worried about me, said she wanted to help, and I believed her because she was my daughter and because I was lonely. That was my first mistake. If this story's already hitting close to home, stick around. We share stories like this on Insight Over Revenge. If you haven't subscribed yet, it only takes a second and you won't miss what's coming next. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. The first year was fine. Renee cooked sometimes, she helped with the gutters. We watched old game shows after dinner. It felt almost like family again. Then she lost her job. No problem, I said. Take your time. This is your home too. She'd find something. She always did. But she didn't find something. Instead, she found Marcus. Marcus was her boyfriend. He moved in 6 months later without asking me. Just showed up one Thursday evening with 2 duffel bags and a flat-screen TV. And when I told Renee that wasn't okay, that I needed to be consulted about who lived under my roof, she looked at me like I'd said something cruel. "Dad, this is my home too. You've always made me feel like a guest." I'd never said a word like that in my life, but I let it go, because that's what parents do. We absorb the accusations. We question ourselves. We wonder, was I wrong? Did I make her feel that way? That was my second mistake, doubting my own memory. Over the next few months, something shifted in that house. Slowly at first. Small things. My coffee mug disappeared from its spot. My tools were moved. My name stopped appearing in conversations between Renee and Marcus, replaced with he and him, and eventually silence whenever I walked into a room. Then one evening, I wasn't supposed to be home. I'd planned to drive to my buddy Earl's place for cards, but Earl called it off, so I came back early, and I heard them through the kitchen door. Renee and Marcus. "He's old, Marcus. He won't last another 5 years in this house anyway. If we can just get him to sign over the power of attorney." I didn't move, not even when my hands started shaking against the wall, because once you hear something like that, you don't get to unhear it. My hand on the wall, cold. My chest doing something I hadn't felt since the day Sandra died. Betrayal has a particular sound. It doesn't shout, it whispers, and the whisper is always worse. I didn't walk in. I didn't confront them. I went upstairs, sat on the edge of my bed in the dark, and I thought, long and hard, like Sandra used to tell me to. She always said, "Gerald, you don't think when you're angry. You wait, then you think." So I waited. 3 weeks later, Renee came to me with papers, legal papers. She said it was just estate planning, said it made sense, said she'd talked to a lawyer, said it would protect me. I told her I'd think about it. The next morning, I drove to my own lawyer, a man named Phil Booker, who'd handled Sandra's estate and knew every inch of what I owned. I told him everything. He listened without blinking. Then he said 7 words that changed everything. "Gerald, don't sign a single thing. Not yet." Over the next 2 weeks, Phil helped me do something I should have done the moment Marcus moved in. We quietly restructured how the house was held. We updated my will. We moved certain accounts, and we made sure that if anything happened to my signature or my free will, there were multiple legal safeguards already in place. I didn't tell Renee any of this. And then came the morning she changed the locks. I'd gone out early for groceries, came back, key didn't work, knocked, Renee came to the door, and told me, calmly, that it was better for everyone if I stayed somewhere else for a while. Said I'd been difficult, said Marcus felt uncomfortable. What decision would you make here? The house is yours, your name is on the deed, and your daughter is standing in the doorway telling you to leave. Most people would have shouted, called the police, had a breakdown on the front porch. I drove to a motel, called Phil, and said 3 words, "It's time. Go." What Renee didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that the mortgage on that house had a clause. What she didn't know was that the mortgage had one rule: lock the owner out without permission, and the bank steps in, fast. It stated plainly that any change to the property's access arrangements, including lock replacements without owner consent, without the primary mortgage holder's written approval, could trigger a full loan review and accelerated repayment demand. My name was on that mortgage, not hers. Phil had already been in contact with the bank, not to cause chaos, but to document everything: the changed locks, my exclusion from the property, the dates, the timeline. 4 days after I was locked out, Renee received a certified letter from the bank. It was formal, it was cold, it outlined the clause violation and gave her 30 days to remedy the situation or face formal proceedings. She called me that afternoon, screaming, said I'd gone too far, said I was being vindictive, said I was destroying the family. I let her finish. Then I said, quietly, the way Sandra always told me to, "Renee, I didn't do anything. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences of what you did. There's a difference." She hung up. The pressure from the bank changed everything inside that house. Within 2 weeks, Marcus was gone. Renee called again. Different tone this time. Quieter. She said she was sorry, said she didn't know how things had gotten that far, said Marcus had pushed her, said she missed me. I believe some of that, maybe most of it. But here's what I told her. I love you, Renee. I will always love you. But I will not be managed. I will not be maneuvered out of my own life. And if we're going to have a relationship going forward, it starts with honesty, not paperwork. She moved out a month later, got her own apartment. We talk on Sundays now. It's not what it was, but it's real, which is more than I could say for the 2 years she lived under my roof. I went back to my house, stood in the kitchen, made coffee in my mug, which I found in a box in the garage. I sat at the table where Sandra and I used to have breakfast, where Renee used to do her homework at age 9, pencil tucked behind her ear, where 30 years of a life had been quietly, stubbornly built. And I thought, I didn't win because I fought harder. I lost a daughter I thought I knew, and that cost more than the house ever could. I won because I didn't panic, because I waited, because I thought, because sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is refuse to react. Gerald didn't raise his voice, he didn't call names, he didn't make a scene on the front porch. He just made one phone call to the right person and let the system do what it was designed to do. And I think that's worth sitting with for a moment. Because here's what I want to know from you, and I mean this genuinely. What would you have done if your own child locked you out of your home? Would you have knocked harder, called the police, or would you have walked away and made a plan like Gerald did? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if Gerald's story moved you, if it reminded you that patience and strategy will always outlast anger and impulse, then share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. You never know whose life it might reach at exactly the right moment. Subscribe to Insight Over Revenge, where wisdom always wins. I'll see you there.